Believing that we won't be great at something can hold some of us back from even giving whatever it is a go in the first place. And for those who are confirmed perfectionists, this belief can be even more of a barrier. My guest this week is Skye Pennant, the creator of Slow Stitch Club and a professional mender, mending educator and author. Skye suffers daily with perfectionism and imposter syndrome. If you experience those tendencies yourself, Skye has some wonderful advice on how to overcome them and become the visible mender you always hoped you'd be. So hang around a couple of minutes and we'll get into all of that and more with Skye. Welcome to Check Your Thread, the podcast that will help you sew more sustainably. My name's Zoe and I'm obsessed with sewing. I've been blogging about it for over 17 years and I'm the creator and host of the popular handmade wardrobe challenge, Me Made May, that just wrapped up. But, like many people, I've become increasingly concerned about the climate and ecological crises, and I'm looking at the way that my lifestyle contributes to them. So in this podcast, I'll be nerding out about making clothes whilst exploring how to minimise the negative impact that it may have. I really hope you'll join me in this journey. How's it going, lovely listener? If you challenged yourself during Me Made May this year, well done on making it to the end. If you discovered anything useful or any interesting insights and you're looking to share them with someone, I am all ears. You can email me, zoe@checkyourthread.com, or you can find me on Instagram @checkyourthread. So we've finished the fabric stash reduction mini-series and we've talked about organising the fabric resources that we have left. So we're done talking about fabric collections for a little bit. But I just wanted to share this super interesting comment that I received from Check Your Thread listener and patron Martin in response to the episode that I made with Nike Barua, which was episode 182, about organising fabric swaps. So Martin took inspiration from the episode, as Nike and I hoped, but took it in an interesting way that I don't think Nike or I predicted. Martin writes, Zoe, just a big amazing for your episode on fabric swaps. I really enjoyed it, and not just from the sewing point of view. I held 2 scuba equipment table sales, and the problem seemed to be getting the word out. Nike had some great ideas. I loved the use of Eventbrite to gauge interest, and some shared ideas, especially the tactical use of cake. My mind is now thinking scuba sale in the morning, fabric swap after lunch. Thank you for that, Martin. So Martin has been inspired to use some of Nike's tactics for an entirely different pastime, but it's still about keeping what exists in use for longer by getting items that someone no longer wants into the hands of someone who does want it and will make use of it. So, although we didn't predict this outcome, I'm beyond thrilled that the ideas and the tips have spread beyond just fabric swaps. So whether or not you were inspired to organise a fabric swap by that episode, you could have a think about what other areas of your life the tips could apply to. A nearly new baby gear or kids' clothes or toy swap are obvious ones, but what about a cosplay outfit swap? Or music equipment, or gardening or DIY tools, or beauty products and equipment? I don't know, there's so many options. Thank you so much, Martin. So there has been a new patron signing up to support the podcast this week, but they didn't give their real name. You know who you are, and thank you so, so much. Right, so today's episode, I'm so happy to have had this conversation with Skye because she was so open to talking about all aspects of mending, including the psychology around it and the social role it does and doesn't play. I spoke at the top of this intro about the perfectionism and imposter syndrome stuff, but this conversation goes in plenty of other fascinating directions also. So there's actually a second part to this conversation that you'll hear next week that is a wholly practical one. And wholly being the appropriate word because we're covering all things knitwear repair. So until next week, take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones, take care of those out there who need our help. Have a think about what other categories of belongings you could host a swap or sale for. And enjoy! Okay, so welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for talking to me. I'm really excited to get to speak to you. I've just seen you on Instagram doing amazing things and discovered your website, and it took me a while to kind of link the two, and I was like, oh, I'm already on this person's mailing list, so I'm really happy to get to speak to you today. So can we start with you telling us who you are, where you are, and what fills your days?
Okay, so my name is Skye and I run Slow Stitch Club, and I am based in Frome in Somerset. And my days, what fills my days? I guess at the moment, my days are filled with mending clothes for other people. So working with a couple of different brands, mending for them, and then more personal commissions for other people as well. And then I have an online shop as well. So dealing with kits and putting kits together and sending out orders.
Right. So you're in your attic right now. Is this where
Hmm.
you spend like a lot of your kind of working life?
Yes, pretty much every day.
Aw. So what are the brands that you work with and how did you get that and what does that entail?
So at the moment, I'm working with a company called The Seam. So they match different makers like myself to the customer. So a customer will message in with them and say, I've got a handbag or a jumper or a pair of shoes, whatever it is that needs fixing. And then they'll assign that project to one of us and then they post it to us and we mend it and send it back.
Oh, amazing.
So that's really good. And then through them, I also mend for a company called Sheep Inc., who are a knitwear brand. So I do lots of jumper repairs for them as well.
So is knitwear kind of your specialist subject?
Yes, definitely.
Good, because that's very much reflected in the questions that we've got coming up for you later from the
Yeah.
from the patrons.
I noticed there's so many knitwear questions.
Yeah, I feel it's, especially if people are predominantly garment sewers as opposed to knitters or crocheters or other kind of yarn craft people, it's kind of, it's like we can handle a broken seam. We can handle even like a replacing of a zip, you know, these are things that kind of within our skill set, but it feels like knitwear is a bit slightly like another frontier, I think, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, it felt like that for me for a really long time because I think, you know, if you are a knitter or a crocheter, you know that you've just got this one continuous length of yarn. As soon as there's any kind of damage in that, it feels quite scary to then have to go in and fix that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And well, hopefully you can help us alleviate some fear in a little bit. But I want to chat to you more about your work, your approach. So you wrote an amazing book. I've got it here.
Yay, thank you. Oh,
Congratulations.
thanks so much.
So in your book called Well Worn, you wrote that you used to mend your clothes invisibly or as invisibly as possible, but that you've transitioned over to mending garments visibly, albeit very artfully. So in fact, out of all the projects in your book, I think only the jeans crotch repair is the one that's done in a way that's kind of quite hidden.
Yeah.
So what kind of caused that shift in approach?
Well, I think for me growing up, mending my clothes was just normal. It wasn't ever something I really thought of as an artistic thing. It was just what you did. You know, you got a hole in something, you sewed up the hole, or if a button fell off, you fixed the button. And I think it hadn't occurred to me that I could turn that into something creative. I think maybe in my teenage years, I started patching things, you know, denim jackets with patches on or band patches and things like that. But for me, the visible side of it came in after university. So I studied fashion design at university. I specialised in menswear and I made a lot of clothes during that time. And there was one term, I think it might have been my first or second year, where we had to make men's shirts. And there was just something about spending so much time making a collar over and over again, or making a button stand, doing plackets, all of those really technical things where you have these millimeter tolerances. And my personality is very much, if it's not perfect, it's not good enough. So that whole university experience really was quite damaging for me personally in a way, because it just meant that I ended up hating making clothes.
Oh, so it really amplified that kind of natural instinct that you had to make things really exact, and you're
Yeah,
being extra pressured to be really exact.
yeah, absolutely. So I just fell out of love with making clothes at all because I
Oh,
lost the enjoyment for sewing, which my whole time at school I'd absolutely loved. And then sort of alongside that, after university, I found a speedweave darning loom in Snooper's Paradise in Brighton, and I just picked it up. I'd vaguely heard of it, seen it, and I started darning things with that. And I started darning with contrasting colours to make it easier for myself, just so that I could see what I was doing. And
oh,
that's when I went, oh, this is really cool. I love this. This means that I'm not trying to make the darn invisible. I'm trying to show it off because it's a completely different color. And then somehow alongside that, the feeling of it being perfect sort of started to disappear as well.
oh. So you're like, look, I'm really not trying to make this invisible.
Yeah.
Just giving yourself that complete, like, we're not even beginning to try and make this invisible.
Yeah.
This is going completely the other way, and that kind of,
That broke it for me. Yeah,
That's
because
so interesting.
I think when, if you've got a black jumper with yellow darns on it, people are going to be so fascinated by the fact that the darns are yellow, they're not going to say, oh, that's not a perfect square or whatever shape it is that you've darned. Whereas if you have your black jumper and you've tried to mend it with a black darn, it's much more noticeable if it's not a perfect shape. And I think, yeah, that just really helped break that cycle I was in and made it way more fun.
Ah, and you felt like a kind of freedom in that.
Yeah, absolutely. So much. And it just meant I could play around. I had so many items of clothing that I could play around with and working with colour, I've got quite a monochrome wardrobe, so then adding pops of colour in through my men's became a really fun project.
To back up a little bit, so you were saying that it was very kind of second nature to you to fix your clothes.
Yeah.
Is that something that was in your like familial culture, or the people around you, your friends? Where did that come from?
Definitely wasn't my friends. I think I was so lucky, and looking back, I don't think I knew at the time how lucky I was, but I spent most of my school life in the textiles room. I
Oh, that
didn't.
sounds bliss.
Yeah, it was great, and I didn't learn to mend from my family necessarily, but it was something we all did. But for me, it was just being absorbed in that classroom all the time. It was just my subject, and I just wanted to know as much as I could about it. I think, yeah, how long have you been sewing? I think once you start, once you get absorbed in, oh, that's how a seam is constructed or whatever it is, you want to know more and more about it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's the thing. So I'd like to ask you actually, like, so obviously you've been at it a long time and you've worked really hard to develop your skills, which I want to hear about in a sec. But for some people who might like look at your work and the work of others that create amazing men's and visible men's professionally, and they might think like, but mine can never look that good, and it might put people off from trying to mend visibly or even from trying at all. Like, have you heard objections like that
Yes.
before? And like,
Yeah.
what's your response?
Okay, so firstly, I think it's really important for me to say that I have massive imposter syndrome every single day.
Do
I
you?
cannot believe that I'm doing this for a living. I
Like, shh, don't tell
I
anyone.
just I'm waiting for someone to phone me up and go, excuse me, what do you think you're doing? This is unacceptable.
The mending police.
Exactly.
Revoking your license.
I think maybe there is an element that has created people that is always going to be there a little bit. So I hear that at workshops a lot, that objection of I can't do it like that. So I think the other thing we have to remember, it's very human for us to want to try a new thing, and if we're not immediately brilliant at it, we give up.
I think that's the curse of being an adult, I think,
Yeah,
isn't it? Because
yeah,
when you're a kid, yeah, most of your pictures are not very good. And you're
yeah,
like, I had fun,
yeah,
next.
exactly.
But as an adult, we're like, we don't give ourselves that permission, do we? Because often we don't have the time to like
Yeah.
just keep at it and make mistakes, do we?
So I think that's the main thing at workshops, especially, that I want to encourage people to play and to take away. So the sort of accidental slogan I've ended up having is that mended is better than perfect,
Love
because
it.
I think we all have clothes in our wardrobe that are just there going, hello, I've got a hole, you need to fix me before you can wear me again. Even if your mend is wonky, if you then get to wear that piece of clothing again, then I think that's a win. And I think the other thing with workshops, and just for anyone wanting to try it or thinking, oh, if it's not perfect, I can't do it, is to cut yourself some slack, to try it on a pair of socks maybe, or so I always give out sample fabrics at workshops so that you're not just jumping straight into that heirloom jumper or your
Yeah,
favorite
yeah.
pair of jeans or something. I think
Yeah.
that's
So the stakes are lower.
exactly, yeah, take the pressure off yourself and just have a tea towel or something where you can just think, this really, there's no pressure for this to look a certain way. It doesn't matter. And then I think once you allow yourself that, then you said it's like the time to sit and think, well, I'm just going to give myself half an hour to just do a few stitches and see what happens. And I mean, I'm the same with any craft. Every time I try a new skill, I want to be perfect at it. But I think you really have to push against that.
Yeah. Well, that's probably what makes you such a good teacher in the regard of tackling those particular objections, because they are things that you feel yourself and you have felt. So you
Yeah.
can relate to that feeling of
Yeah.
wanting to be really good at it and needing to loosen up a little bit initially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also there's just such a joy to be found when you see something click for someone. So I worked in a high school for a few years in Brighton, and especially with teenagers, for me, there is nothing better than seeing a teenager, a moody, sullen teenager, figure out a sewing technique and go, oh my God, I can do that now. It's so good. And it sort of hadn't occurred to me at that point that there was a space for me to try that with adults as well, because there are so many things we miss out on learning as kids. And then, like you said, as an adult, you then think it's maybe too late or you can't approach it in the same way. And I think that's the thing I want to try and bring back for people.
That's so good. So how did you develop your knowledge around mending techniques then? Because obviously you just said you studied fashion at university.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you had a foundation of knowledge about how clothing is constructed, and you said that you already knew your way around a sewing machine before you even went to university. So not saying that everyone has to like follow your path as such and dedicate as much time to sewing or mending as you have, but it'd be great to hear how you went from like fashion student to mending teacher, and so if you could give us a bit of a whistle stop tour, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think books are a bit of a weakness for me. So once I figured out that it was something I wanted to learn more about, I then picked up as many books as I could find. So let me just grab my favourite one to show you actually.
Please.
So this is my favourite one. It's called Mend It by Maureen Goldsworthy.
Ooh.
And it's just really, really simple. It was such a great way for me to learn about knitwear repair. It's got really good, just simple black and white illustrations. So for me, that's the thing. When I decide I want to learn about something, I will find as many books as I can, read them back to front, and then I think I did just start experimenting. And I think at that time, I always had a hobby. I always had something else I was doing outside of work. So this just became that new thing. I hyperfixated on mending. I started learning how to mend things. I learnt to knit when I was at uni as well. I had quite a lot of my internships at knitwear brands. So that was really helpful to gain a bit more knitwear knowledge. And then, yeah, I think then the books, I don't know, it's a hard one because I don't think they're for everyone. But for me, that is just the way I soak up the knowledge.
Yeah. So this was already something that you were interested in during university?
Not mending so much. I think, to be honest, when I think back, and I don't think I can say this for a fact, but I don't remember learning anything about repair at uni.
No, I did. I did fashion design as well.
Yeah.
Where did you go?
Epsom in Surrey.
Oh, that was one of my options.
Yeah. So the only time I do remember learning about repair as a part of the process was in A-level design technology. And it wasn't in the textiles part. It was, when we rotated around to product design, I think. And there was a big emphasis on, that circular design system where you have to think about when you're designing a packaging for a product, you have to think about the waste that will be left over and how it's, there was a lot put on that. But I never remember learning about that when I was at uni. So I think it's really odd. But I think because being a student at the time, I had no money like most students. And that was when I really started relying on charity shops. So that became, I think, the basis of my wardrobe, suddenly not being able to shop any other way. But then what comes with that, and where I was lucky, which I know a lot of people don't have the access to, is that I could buy things that didn't fit me, knowing I could then tailor them to fit me. So then, yeah, I think then you start looking at clothes in a slightly different way. If you see something in a charity shop that has a few holes in, I just see that as a challenge. And I think that started at uni, and I just thought, oh, it's fine, I'm sure I can fix that. But actually mending as a skill to then offer to other people didn't happen until 2020.
Right.
I think I've gone on a really backwards way to get back to answering your question.
Whatever route you want to take is fine by me.
So yeah, I think, and like I said, the imposter syndrome, I think, is I put off mending for other people for a long time. So I started workshops in 2020 and I started selling kits, and I wrote booklets and guides and things. And that was when I first wrote my book proposal as well. And I think I had maybe one or two people ask me to mend something for them that year for money, and it was for the first time, because I've always mended things for my siblings as well, but that's different. And I was really hesitant to do it, and I honestly made myself sick over it. I was so anxious about just creating
once again the perfectionism.
Yeah, the perfectionism. And I think the hardest part about mending for other people, every day I face this, is that mending is a real choice. and it's always going to be attached to something that you care about, which makes sense. You're not going to get something repaired. But for me, then that's terrifying, because I get these stories, amazing stories. I'm so honoured to be able to hear them. But these stories like, oh, this was my late mother's, or this belonged to my great grandmother. And I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, that's such a lot of pressure. But in a way, you know, as much as that adds a pressure, for me, that is a huge part of why I do it, because I think, from my point of view anyway, in the world of clothing, we've lost such a connection to our clothing, and I think it just really is heartening for me when I hear those stories.
So it's like a motivator and a kind of fear inducer
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can you remember what your first paid commission mend was?
Yeah, and it wasn't anything like what I would normally take on now, and I probably wouldn't take it on now. It was a silk tablecloth, or like a wall hanging, but it had also been used as a tablecloth, and it had a woven trim and then a fringe, and the woven trim had just disintegrated, and it belonged to the owner's late mother. So she wanted it repaired invisibly as well, which is not something I take on as much as the visible stuff. So I had to reweave a trim to go along that edge of the tablecloth, and then refringe it as well. And yeah, it was very nerve-wracking.
I feel that's almost more restoration than mending.
It was definitely restoration, and I remember sharing that and someone saying, "Oh, you should go on the repair shop." And I thought, "Oh no, I've ended up in the wrong. I've chosen like 2 tiny alleyways to go down, and I've picked the wrong one."
Oh no, back up.
Back up, yeah, back up. But it actually went really well. She was really happy with it, and it was a good challenge for me. It's not something I've done again since, anything like that.
Interesting. So you actually started mending for yourself and for siblings, and then you started teaching before you actually, or making inroads into teaching before you actually started taking on commissions. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I put off the commissions for a long time because I know myself. I know how much pressure I put on myself, even when it wasn't this mend has to be perfect, but it was the pressure of the clothing that meant a lot to other people. That just felt very, very scary, and I just said no to quite a lot for a while.
So after university, did you say you were teaching?
No, I had there's a huge years and years between this mending happening and the teaching happening from when I finished uni. So after uni, I didn't know what to do. I had fallen out of love with the industry, didn't want to be in it. I was a fashion photography assistant for someone for a while, so I moved down to Brighton after university. So I worked for her. I worked in a haberdashery for a couple of years. I then worked for someone I think you know, actually, Lisa Lamb. I worked for her for years and years.
Lisa and I started a craft fair together.
I know, yeah. I knew that must be the connection. I just couldn't.
So when was that? When were you down here then?
So I was in Brighton from 2012 to 2017, and then in Burgess Hill from 2017 to 2021.
Ah.
Yeah. So long time.
Yeah.
And I worked for her at U Handbag for maybe 4 years, something like that.
Oh, she's amazing, isn't she? She's just the nicest.
I mean, I owe her so much, because I used to make all the prototypes of her bags and purses, and then write the booklets and the kits. So that's why I think I felt more confident when I started mending to make a booklet telling people how to mend, because I kind of knew that there was a market for that, because she had shown me that.
And you knew how to kind of structure it and how to.
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
Amazing.
And also it was Lisa that I first spoke to her about wanting to write a book. I always knew I wanted to write a book even then. And she said to me, only do it if you love the subject. Don't do it if you're not going to enjoy it, because, and she was right. It was a really long process. And I had loads of ideas back then for books that I'm glad, that never saw the light of day. There was really silly things. But yeah, I think that really did taught me a lot.
So you're doing all sorts of kind of textile and sewing related adjacent kind of jobs, mending in the background, developing your skills, reading everything you could get hold of.
Yeah.
So at what point did you make the leap, and then mending in its various forms, actually doing it and also teaching, became like your job?
So, I mean, my first visible mending workshop happened the week before the first lockdown, which felt like,
Oh,
so basically, I'd done a few trial evenings with some friends. I just said, can I just do this as, be my guinea pig? So I had a couple of friends that were really amazing, and we would just set up in pubs in Brighton. And then I did my very first ticketed workshop. And it was, the week before that happened. And I remember us all sitting at this table in a pub going, is this okay that we're here? We're not really sure at this point. But I came away from that, and I'm such an introverted person. I hate public speaking. I hate everyone looking at me. And I was so physically and mentally drained. And I just remember getting home and going, I really have to do that again. That was amazing. That was so good. But being exhausted by it. And it's such a strange, and I get that even now.
What was it? Because I completely can relate to that, because it does take a lot of energy, doesn't it? Like, especially I think because I teach a lot of sewing workshops, and well, not so much nowadays, but I did for a long time, and it's like, I think, I don't know about you, but I was keenly aware that these are adults who have chosen to be there.
Yeah.
It's very different to teaching kids or teenagers that have to be there, you know?
Yeah.
And you kind of feel that responsibility of, I want them to be enjoying themselves as well as come away with knowledge and to have had a good time.
Yes.
And there's so many layers to it, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for a long time, what I had downplayed for myself, because I had always fixed a button or done, fixed a hem, whatever it was, I'd forgotten that that wasn't everyone else's normal. And that most people, and actually still even now, I'll have people come to workshops now and say, yeah, I thought I should probably learn, because at the moment I just give everything to my mum. And these are, fully grown adults that are still saying that. And I think I had this feeling for so long that I had nothing to teach anyone. But I think, it's just not available to everyone in that way.
And even if they do have some experience, the way that you would approach something, you're going to be naturally sharing things that they don't know or they hadn't seen before. Even if they've been sewing for years, I'm sure that you would be imparting things that they hadn't seen. And it's important to remember that.
Absolutely. And I think it's the approach as well. Like I said, I don't want anyone to feel like they're at school when they're at a workshop. I want people to have fun. There are techniques that you have to do a certain way, but I try to really, say that there's no right or wrong here. It's we're playing around with these things, and we're stretching the limits of what these techniques are and how you can use them. So it's a lot of pressure. Even now, I still find that. But like you said, people are choosing to be there.
So you did your first workshop just before the first lockdown. It was simultaneously exhausting and exhilarating.
Yes.
Yes, more of that. Couldn't for a while. What was the next step?
Well, so I started doing them online. I was very quickly tried to figure out the world of Zoom and online workshops. But then, because I was working in a school at the time, couldn't go in, couldn't work. Although I did go in on and off, because our school was actually helping to make PPE. So I was using the laser cutter to make PPE for a while. But apart from that, couldn't go into school. So that's when I started writing the booklets and selling the kits.
Had you already set up your website at this point?
No, right. So I don't know if this is...
I feel like you've gone about this in a very backwards kind of way.
Yeah. So the thing with me, going back again to the perfectionism thing, is that if something isn't perfect, I won't do it. Right. And that's the thing I was trying to fight. And I knew that was the mindset I had to be in for this. And I knew nothing about website design. I didn't have a logo. I didn't have any branding. I didn't have anything. And I remember speaking to one of my best friends. He lives in the Netherlands. I was having a phone call with him, and I was telling him just, I'm too scared. Classic me. He knew what to expect. He knew where this conversation was going. And he phoned me back and he said, I've just bought you the domain for slowstitch.club. You've got it now. It's there for a year. You better do something with it. And it's, I owe him a lot, because he knew that in that moment I just needed someone to go, just do it. Just start, and it'll come into place later, which is such a backwards, like you said, it's a backwards way for me to have approached anything. But I then suddenly had this pressure of not letting him down. So I was like, oh my God, okay, well, I'm going to have to put something on there.
That's so interesting. Do you know what? There's a massive parallel. My husband I can't remember if it's Christmas or whatever, bought checkyourthread.com.
Really?
Like, oh, it's real
It's
now!
real, yeah. And I think it was just someone having that belief in you that it has to happen.
Yeah.
It was just the push I needed. And before that, And even for a while after that, I was only selling my kits through Instagram. So I would just make 10, put a post on Instagram saying I've got 10 kits available, DM me your PayPal details. And then I was just posting them off like that. And it stayed like that for ages.
So what were in the initial kits that you were making?
So I made a booklet. So it showed how to do just a simple running stitch, how to do some patching, how to do a basic plain weave darn. It hasn't actually changed a lot since. I've embellished it. And then a couple of sashiko needles, a darning needle, and some sashiko cotton. And that was it. And then you could add, so I also designed some acrylic stitching templates if you wanted to, draw your designs on. But yeah, they were real beginner kits, because I think that was the other thing. I was very aware that it's easy to overwhelm someone if they don't know anything about that subject. And I think working with kids had really helped me understand that. So I was just trying to keep things as beginner friendly as possible. Yeah.
Oh, it all kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Or like all the experience you'd had teaching, the teenagers, working with Lisa Lamb, writing booklets. It's all coming together. I get it.
Yeah, it just took a really long time.
Yeah. So who were your initial customers then? You were saying you were selling through Instagram. Just completely random?
Yeah, completely random. I think this is the other thread, another little pun for this kind of tapestry that's happening, is that when I found that speed weave, I set up an Instagram account for it.
Oh. It's like how some people set up an Instagram for their dog. You've done it for your little speed weave.
I was doing it for my dance, because I then thought, oh, this is really fun. I'm doing all these visible things. And I didn't want to, I have a personal Instagram account that I was just sharing all this sewing stuff. And I thought, right, I'm just going to make a new one. I still, I owe a lot to that, because very quickly, a lot of people started engaging with it, going, oh my goodness, what is this tool? What is this mending that you're doing? What are you doing? And I was just doing these really crap videos, time-lapse videos, or just really awkward angles of me darning, and people just loved it. And so then I then started showing the templates that I'd made, and I did a couple of lives back then where I was just showing a process. And then,
when you say back then, when are we talking?
2020.
During lockdown?
Yeah. Maybe even the end of 2019 then, but mostly 2020. Yeah, and it's another thing where I feel very guilty about the fact that I had that luxury of time during lockdown where we were all stuck at home, and I ended up doing all of this, and I feel really lucky that I got to do that. But it's a very strange thing to feel lucky for,
I do. I understand completely.
Yeah, it's very weird. But yeah, just strangers. I mean, I had a couple of local people in Brighton that bought kits, and then you could just walk to their houses and post them to them.
Yeah. So how did it then progress from selling kits? You were teaching online.
Yeah. I'm also one of the cliched people from lockdown that then relocated. My family are all on the Isle of Wight, so I didn't see them for over a year during that time. My partner's family are all in Cirencester, that kind of area, sort of Gloucestershire, Somerset area. And we knew we wanted to move to be closer to them. And we just kept looking up places. I didn't really want to move to Bristol because I was done with city life. Frome just kept coming up, so we just took a gamble and moved here. So I think that probably is a helpful thing to know for the next steps, because when I started the kits and the workshops and things, I just always thought that was another hobby for me. It's another thing I'm doing on the side. I always had things on the side. I had other Etsy shops and things before that. I just never thought it would progress further than that.
Well, I see so many, I'm sorry to make this about myself for a second, but I see so many parallels. Like, that's why I've always had little side projects, side hustles, making bags, doing this. And that one of my side hustles from my day job was the craft fair with Lisa Lamb. I couldn't help but do other things on the side. So I totally get that.
Yeah, I had to. I just couldn't. Yeah. The evenings were just always full of something.
Yeah, I could never understand how people just go home and watch telly. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, so carried on like that for a while. I guess also the only other thing during that time was that I did write the first version of my book proposal. Wrote it then, didn't do anything with it, got too scared.
Because it wasn't perfect.
Well, I think I just thought, who am I? To think that I could write a book? And I then did actually, before I left Brighton, I approached a Brighton publisher, and they were really lovely, but they wanted it to be a book about mindfulness with a bit of sewing thrown in rather than a sewing book. And I just said, no, I want it to be a sewing book. So I kind of just let that lie. Then relocated at the beginning of 2021, got another part-time job when I moved here. Again, just doing it on the side with the mending workshops. I then was very, very lucky to meet the owners of the haberdashery here in Frome. Their haberdashery is Millie Moon, and they have just been so supportive. I remember going in to see them for the first time saying, oh, I don't suppose you'd want to stock these kits that I have. And they were just so lovely and instantly said, oh, do you do workshops? You could use the space for workshops. And they just, again, a lot of what I do in Frome, I think, is thanks to them. They just gave me the confidence to give it a go and have just been very supportive. But even, that whole year, I never thought that I would do this full time. It was always just at the same time. And I think maybe it was probably from them, they would then start saying to me, oh, we've had a customer in the shop who said, can you recommend someone to mend a jumper or something? And I think that was when I realised that people were still asking me this, and it's something that I should probably try.
They just won't stop asking.
Yeah, but I very slowly started mending a few things for people. And then workshops started happening in a few other places. There was a really great farm called Wick Farm down in Devon. They got in touch and they wanted me to go down there and do a workshop. And that was, the first time doing anything like that, where it was just it was a woman in her kitchen in this art space, and we just all gathered around the table. That was amazing. And that, I think that was the first time I started thinking, this is more than just an evening thing now. This was then when I then reduced my hours at my part-time job. The balance started turning. Maybe that, then I started working with Toast a little bit. So Toast have their own repair specialists, and they had one of them who was long-term sick. And they asked me if they could just send me a few things to try and sort of share the load of that. So that was really good. Yeah, I really feel like I'm just telling you my entire life story now.
No, I love it. So it was more a case. So it wasn't a case of like, right, quit the day job. This is what I do now. It was slowly eking, and the balance of kind of paid work doing something else, this on the side, gradually shifted.
Yeah.
Until
I wrote the book with another job. I still had that other job. I only quit that job last January. So I'm just going into my second year of doing this full time, because I think I was just too scared for ages. When I look back, I don't know how I wrote the book, ran the business, and had a job at the same time. It was killing me. But I just was too scared to take the leap and try it. But it was worth it so far.
Awesome. I'm going to completely change the subject now. So something that you wrote in the introduction sections of your book on page 10 that really made me think. So you wrote, now more than ever, we need to shift our perspectives on repair to make sure it's an accessible option for all, but also one that is no longer associated with any sort of class discrimination or prejudices that can cause people to shy away from it. So I would love to talk to you a bit more about this, because so obviously I would love it if it was the case, but I would love to talk about what you think kind of needs to change to make mending truly accessible for everyone. And also, and this is probably way more of a challenge, like what needs to change to truly make mended clothing something that everyone is happy to wear, Because like from what I see from where I live, which is a really mixed area in terms of backgrounds, economic, everything. Like there are a ton of people here that wouldn't dream of mending a garment or then wearing that mended garment. I feel that the historical associations of mended clothing being linked to poverty are just still too strong for some people,
Yeah.
And I fear that like those of us who do wear visibly mended clothing, myself included, in a way, I wonder what role we are playing in that still, Because I wonder if it could be perceived from other people that we are kind of flaunting that we could buy new clothes, but we're choosing not to because we've got the time and the money and the brain space to lavish on an artful darn on our expensive jumper made from, natural fibres, So obviously I'm completely playing devil's advocate because I'm obviously an enormous proponent to all types of mending. Obviously I wouldn't make episode after episode about it, but I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on that, about the topic of like wealth and class and visible mending and how it may be almost seen as almost like a performance. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's a really big question.
It's such a big question.
Yeah, I'm going to go way off tangent, I think, because I've
I
got
love it.
so many different things. I think, firstly, absolutely, I think we do have to acknowledge that. And I do see that at my workshops. There's a certain kind of person that comes to my workshop.
Right.
And I think that's why I push so hard to have stuff online as well, because not everyone can afford to come to a workshop, and I appreciate that.
And also, it needs to be said that you have created loads of amazing YouTube videos, which are literally free for anyone that has an internet connection.
Yeah, and that's always been really important to me. I personally have learnt so much from YouTube over the years. There are certain things, if I do a knitting project, I can always count on YouTube to remind me how to, I don't know, knit one through the back or whatever it is. There's always something.
For me, my most watched video on YouTube is the thumb cast on method.
Yeah.
It just doesn't go in my brain. So every time, back to YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I've always known that where I could, without cutting my own nose off, that I wanted to offer that stuff for free as much as possible. So that's always been really important. But I do acknowledge that there are certain people that come to workshops, and I wish, there was more I could do to change that. I think, so the class thing is really hard. I have grown up witnessing what it's like to not have the right clothes, not to have the cool thing or the latest thing or anything like that. And what I think is that there is a really, really big disconnect with what we think of when we wear clothing now. I think that the class thing, I will come back to it, but it's almost like it's so much easier now to go onto any fast fashion website or even into your supermarket and just buy a new one for less than £10 of whatever the garment is, a pair of jeans, a jumper, whatever it is, that the convenience of that has taken over how we view skills, right? And I think it's the supermarket's kind of an interesting one in that, I don't know if you ever tried growing your own veg or anything in the garden, but it's the same kind of thing. We don't think about where things come from anymore. So I think with clothing, we're not thinking about how much has gone into making that piece of clothing before it even ends up on the shop floor. So then if you aren't aware of all of that, then you're not going to prioritize mending it, and you wouldn't want to necessarily spend the time drawing attention to the broken area of clothing when you could just buy a new one. So I think that's a really important thing, I think, and that is something that I would personally like to see changing. And I think the class thing is really hard because historically, and I'm not a historian, but from what I know, historically everything had to be mended, because it just wasn't, like I said, the convenience of just going out and buying a new coat wasn't an option. We've gone from having 4 seasons of fashion to 52 or whatever it is now, probably 100. It's crazy. And even the wealthiest of people, if they're having custom made gowns or clothing made for them back then, if things got broken, they would have still mended them. My understanding of it is that it's then the skill then used, presumably they would have had hired help to mend things for them, whereas people lower down the class line would have had to mend it themselves, and maybe they then don't have access to the same yarns or the same threads, and then you see this mend that's not supposed to be drawing attention, but you can see it, so then people are more aware of it. I'm not sure, I'm not a historian, but it's frustrating to think that there are only a certain kind of people now choosing to mend when I think there is still value in mending anything. I think that's another really interesting thing. A lot of people still say to me, I'm not mending that because it's just fast fashion. It's not worth it. And I think unless it doesn't fit you, unless it's continuously ripping and tearing, I think it's worth repairing something as many times as you can. I've got fast fashion jeans that I still have in my wardrobe that I've had for years, and I'm going to keep mending them until I cannot mend them anymore, because they exist. They're already here. A lot of effort has gone into making them. Someone has been probably treated badly to have made them. To me, I think it's really important to keep those things going for as long as possible. And I don't think that should only apply to a £200 pair of jeans rather than a £20 pair of jeans.
I think you made such a good point about the supermarket thing as well. When you can literally put a t-shirt in your basket with your milk and your cheese,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So when you can literally do that, what's to differentiate how you feel about that, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's so complicated, and it's hard because I'm coming from a place where, I'm child free. So I know I have that luxury of not having to mend for many, many people in my household. It's just me and my partner. So I don't have to worry about time from that point of view. And I know that, being time poor is probably the biggest reason I find people saying to me that they just don't have the time to mend.
Yeah. And that's very much an economic thing, because the cost of living is so much now that even if people are in a family with two adults, it's no longer an option now for not both those adults to be probably bringing money in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think then, maybe this is very easy for me to say, and maybe it's not going to be true for everyone, but for me personally, having time in my day not on my phone and not working, that's the biggest luxury I can give myself. And I think that's the thing. I speak to people about this a lot, and someone will say, how long is this going to take, because I don't have the time? And I'll say, well, just have you got 15 minutes, or have you got half an hour? And I think we have to confront ourselves about this, because there's a big chance that most of us can easily spend half an hour scrolling, on our phones, and doom scrolling, or
Yes.
and I'm
Yeah.
not saying that that's not important. I think we are absolutely allowed to have whatever downtime we want to. But I think even just 15 minutes to look at something in your wardrobe that needs mending and just say, I'm not even going to fix that right now, but I'm just going to make a plan for what I need to do. I'm just going to quickly go on YouTube and see what I can find, or whatever it is. I think, I'm worried that maybe this is just too personal to how I feel about my time, but I'm just worried that I am spending too much time online at the moment. And for me,
I think a lot of people are feeling like that. I know I am.
and I think for me that then comes out is in wanting to learn skills and other things. Like at the moment for me, I want to learn how to grow some veg this year. That's another thing that I'm aware that being screen free is better for my mental health. And I think maybe that's another frustrating thing. I know I've gone way off tangent from
No, the tangent is perfect.
from the class of it. I think the other thing that can be frustrating, and this only ever really happens with trolls on the internet, not in real life, but I'll get a lot of people saying, oh, I can't afford to buy sustainably, so I can only afford fast fashion. And I think that argument really frustrates me, because I'm blaming companies for this, because they have done such a good job of greenwashing the hell out of things and saying, oh, look, this is made from recycled fabrics, or this is now £100, so it must be sustainable. And all they're doing the whole time there is they're just trying to keep you buying. When is it Ursula de Castro says, the most sustainable garment is the one that you already own. I think she's actually changed that wording a bit slightly to keep up to date with her thinking. But we're constantly told we should be doing better, and we should be being more sustainable, and we should be buying more sustainable things, when I think that's what I think repair can be really powerful for, is that you are claiming back your time when you can find it. You are taking the time to learn a new skill for yourself. You're taking that time to mend something that you already have. So presumably you already love it, because you've got it in your wardrobe.
Yeah, you chose it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's then kind of a bit of a middle finger to the company saying, no, I'm not going to go and buy your new recycled thing because you're telling me it's more sustainable.
Yeah. And the problem is never people who genuinely can't afford more expensive clothes
No,
and have
it's
to buy
not.
fast fashion. They are not the problem. That is not the problem. The
Not
problem
at all.
is the perception of disposability of those
Yes,
garments. If you're buying, no
absolutely.
matter what you spend on the initial garment, if you are genuinely going to wear it again and again and again and again and again,
Yeah.
hopefully then mend it too.
Yeah.
But even if not, you're actually wearing the thing, that is not the problem. Those people are not contributing to the problem. It's the people that buy 72 new items per year and they wear them once or never. That is the problem.
Yeah. And I think it's more than that. I wrote something recently where I had a statistic about and this is an American statistic, but the average
Oh, I hate these statistics.
Yeah.
I'm bracing myself.
The average Shein customer is an average age of 35 with a salary of around $65,000. It's quality over quantity. It's this idea that we have to have 10 pairs of jeans rather than one really good pair of jeans. And I think, again, that goes back to the disconnect that we have with our wardrobes. We just feel like we have to keep filling them.
It's the normalization of that as well, isn't it? It's the normalization of the massive haul,
Yeah. And I think that another thing I just thinking then, like, I have some friends that will say to me, oh, sorry, Skye, I bought this from Primark.
Oh, yeah.
And they feel like they're really guilty about it. And I have to say this a lot. I really don't want people to feel like that. Buying new things isn't inherently bad. It's our connection with them over time, right? I buy new things. It's just that I know I'm going to wear them until the point of needing repair, and then I'll repair them.
Thought them through.
Exactly, yeah. And I hate the thought that there are people that think that, it's such extremist behavior, isn't it? Like, oh, I'm going to do a buy nothing year. Whereas maybe you don't need to buy nothing. Maybe you are allowed to buy a new pair of socks if you need them. You just don't need to buy 20 pairs of socks.
Yeah.
It's that thing that's come up recently as well about, overconsumption and underconsumption. And it's so skewed. And I don't think any of the underconsumption stuff I've seen online is underconsumption. It's just normal. And we're just shown so much overconsumption.
True. Like, why is it kind of shocking to have, like, used your foundation to the end of the bottle?
Yeah.
It's just
I know.
normal.
How is that not normal? Yeah.
So many interesting points there. Yes. I'm going to put this out there. What would happen, do you feel, if literally everybody was given a small mending kit?
Well, okay, so that was the other thing I wanted to say. You said about the second part of your question was what needs to change. I personally think that it needs to be back in schools. Something that you see a lot at the moment in schools is that it's just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and just basic, I guess, would it have been home economics that
Yeah.
And I guess the other problem with that is that it would have been more tailored towards women or girls learning those skills. But I do think that those basic skills need to be back in school. I think that they need to be happening from a much younger age, so that you don't then go, become an adult, go out into the world and not know how to do those things. But just as a side note to that, like I said, spent all my time in textiles. I don't know how to cook. I prioritise textiles over the food workshop. So
Yeah.
I do think it's a shame that we're kind of made to pick so early on. You have to pick one thing and go with that. But I also think a mender kit would be great. I think that's a really good way. But I think also it needs to be coming from the companies. What I said about having that circularity in a company's repair should be up there, and you are starting to see it now. I know outdoor gear companies have had this for years. Most tents you can get repairs for life, or puffer jackets and stuff like that. They've always had this approach that you're going to wear these things out and that they should last, or they should be able to be repaired. And I think more needs to be put on that. I think the only problem with that is it's interesting to see. Again, this will go back to class, but for Toast, for example, before they offer their repairs for free, but you would kind of hope so because the garments cost so much in the first place. Whereas Primark, I don't know if you've seen, they're now starting to offer a repair service, but you have to pay for it. Uniqlo, there are a couple of other brands now sort of jumping on that bandwagon of, oh yeah, you can come and get that repaired with us, but you have to pay for it. And again, it is just putting it all back on us as a consumer, when they should be, in my opinion, just producing way less, taking responsibility, producing way less at a better quality. And that's it. It's again, the numbers of clothing being produced has been prioritized over the longevity of them.
Absolutely.
And it's just a broken system. It really is.
Yeah. And when the fibers are so poor and a lot of corners have been cut in manufacture, then they're going to need to be repaired much quicker. So I guess that you don't have that you haven't had a chance to develop that kind of connection with that item.
No.
And it does feel more disposable because you wore it for a handful of times. Lots of issues that we can't get to the bottom of now, but definitely I think you're right. We need to prioritise. I mean, it'd be amazing if sewing was coming back in schools. I don't know if it is or not.
No.
But, I mean, hopefully more of a proliferation of repair cafes and mending workshops.
Yeah.
And maybe just keep at it, keep trying to... So this is the thing, isn't it? It's like, when we wear our visible mended clothes... of our more expensive jeans and our natural fibre knitwear and stuff... I feel very conflicted because I wonder if that is read by some people as almost some sort of weird inverted wealth flaunting.
Yeah.
But also, do we kind of, it must be also potentially, even on a subconscious level, putting it out there that repair is possible when maybe some people haven't seen a repaired garment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I wonder, I don't know where the balance is there.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I can answer that, because for me, repair and visible mending was a way for me to reclaim my class. I think it doesn't feel like a way for me to show off that I've got something nice that I'm repairing. It's a way for me to kind of reclaim that I have to repair it. And I think for me, because this is my job, maybe that makes it slightly different. But personally, for me, in every single fibre of my being, I do feel like I have to. From an economic point of view, yes, and maybe not so much as when I was younger, but yes. But from an environmental point of view, that's why I do this, because I feel like I have to. I have a responsibility. So I think that's what I hope that people see when they see that I'm wearing something that's mended. Not that I'm choosing to flaunt wealth, but that I'm trying to show people that I care about the planet, basically. That I'm saying, there's a really great quote, and I feel frustrated that I can't find it. And I'm sure it must have just been a passing post on Instagram once upon a time, that is something along the lines of, it's not that we can't afford to buy new things or secondhand things, it's that we can't afford, as a planet, as a society, we can't afford not to, because we're causing too much damage. And I think that's the thing I want to get across.
I love that so much. Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and are left feeling inspired. For more info about the podcast, including show notes for this and every episode, head to checkyourthread.com. I'd love to hear from you, so if you have any comments, questions or ideas for future episodes, please get in touch by emailing zoe@checkyourthread.com or find me on Instagram @checkyourthread. Massive thanks to Patrick Potter for production support, to Sylvia Seller for the awesome logo design, and to Simon at Palm Skin Productions for the music. This ad-free podcast would not be possible without listener support, so if you feel you are able, please consider signing up to the Check Your Thread Patreon. For the equivalent of buying me a coffee each month, you'll be making it possible to continue producing regular episodes. Links can be found in the show notes and on the website checkyourthread.com. I hope you'll listen again next week. Until then, take care. Bye!